Bandwidth for VT Talk is provided by vaporworld.co.uk.
Yes, it's that time again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And if you were viewing on either 720 or 480 prior to this going out, you'll have seen the mess that I just got into. But it was worth it. I'm sure it was. Here she comes. There she is. It's me and Sav tonight. That's the team. Dave Dawn here in the chair and Sav in the big thing over my shoulder. Dave, you've got it all to yourself tonight.
That's great. I've got room to stretch out.
You can stretch, you've got room to manoeuvre, and there is a third person, well, almost a third person in the room. For those of you that weren't aware, whoops, I did that well. Try that one. Yeah, I've got to learn how to press these right buttons in the right order. As you may see, there is somewhat of a yes. There's me and it and Sav, there's three of us on the show tonight, and tonight's show is called, of course, what's it called, Sav?
VT Talk.
To you. It's going to be one of those nights tonight. I'm sure it is, because I've just heard myself, and that's it. Now I cannot hear myself. That's fine. It should all be working. This is all. You'd think it was new to us, wouldn't you?
You would.
Never mind. Never mind. We're grown-ups. We can cope, can't we?
Apparently.
Apparently so. Yes. Shall we start?
Sounds like a plan.
Indeedly doodly. I'm going to start by making reference to a forum, and the forum is all about E-cigs, and this was a post that came up earlier on, and I must admit, when first I saw the headline I thought, oh dear. And it says, the trouble with vaping. Much has been blogged and advertised on the advantages of vaping over smoking, and quite justified, but there are a few downsides. Suppliers take note. I was trembling a little bit with this. Technology inadequately explained. For example, what single, double and triple atomizers and what are the advantages? Why can't screw threads be standardized so that the batteries will fit all atomizers? What's the difference between VP and PP? I think they mean VG and PG. And why don't suppliers tell us which one we're going to get or offer us a choice? Frowny face. Then nicotine. When I smoked, I had my nicotine intake down to 0.1 milligram on Silk Cut Ultra, or whatever they're allowed to be called now. With vaping, I have to go to 8 milligram per milliliter to even get the hint of a throat hit. It scares me to think of what my nicotine intake is now, and I'm not going to look at the last bit of that, because it was the second bit that really attracted my interest, and I think it probably will yours as well, because you are quite a low nicotine user, aren't you?
I am, yes. About 11 milligram.
Right. And it was just, it kind of comes back to the 40 tabs in a carto thing, doesn't it, really, in many respects. And a lack of understanding of what you get out of e-juice. And some might say that in actual fact, we don't know. But there's been a study that helps. And we might as well go straight to that, because this interested the hell out of me. And if ever you wanted ammunition for those places that say, you cannot use them in here, everybody will get cancer in 35 seconds flat off what you're breathing out. And you can also counter the, it's water vapour, because this is so interesting. It's been featured in a couple of places. The results of the first comparison of the level of volatile organic compounds emitted by electronic cigarettes as opposed to traditional tobacco cigarettes confirms e-cigarettes reduces a smoker's exposure to such dangerous chemicals. The German researchers conducting the study had test subjects smoke either a tobacco cigarette or vaporise an electronic cigarette in an emission test chamber with the concentration of a number of volatile organic compounds being measured using gas chromatography mass spectrometry. That's a GCMS machine. The results of the study, which is currently available for purchase online and set to appear in Indoor Air, were broken down by Professor in the Department of Community Health Sciences at the Boston University of Public Health, Dr. Michael Siegel, on his tobacco analysis blog. And as luck would have it, I've got it here. So let's go through. If you want to go and look it all up, of course, that's the bit that you need. Shrip T, Markovits D, Uda E, Salthammer T. Does e-cigarette consumption cause passive vaping? And that's to go out very shortly in Indoor Air 2012. So he's gone through all that little lot. And then he says, based on the chamber emissions study, 20 volatile organic compounds were identified in tobacco smoke. Of these, 6 were detected in the electronic cigarette vapour. This is really interesting. The concentration of these 6 compounds in electronic cigarette vapour ranged from 2.5% for acetaldehyde to 39.1% for acetone of the concentration in the tobacco smoke. And I must admit, the first time I read that paragraph I thought, bloody hell, that's high, but it's not. Overall it's 2.5% and 39.1% of the concentration in the tobacco smoke. So at the very worst it's 2/3 better. The exhaled air from vapours was also tested for these compounds. This is what you blow out. The only compounds detected were small amounts of nicotine and flavourings, moderate levels of glycerin and high levels of propylene glycol. Interesting that it doesn't say anything about water vapour in it. The rest of the story. The study confirms that electronic cigarette use greatly reduces the user's exposure to a wide range of chemicals in tobacco smoke. The few chemicals for which exposure remains are at levels well below that of cigarette smoking. The only compound of significant concern was formaldehyde, but its levels were between 5 and 10 times higher in tobacco smoke than in the electronic cigarette vapour. One hypothesis is that formaldehyde may result from the heating of propylene glycol. My sense is that in the long run, electronic cigarettes that use glycerin as an excipient may become the standard. Using glycerin would probably avoid the production of most of the volatile organic compounds detected in this study and would also alleviate any concerns about respiratory irritation. And I think we'll pause there because that's a good point to actually talk about and get people's views on. Now, I do know that the likes of Andy Sutton, for instance, if you give him a glycerin-based, a VG-based juice, he doesn't do awfully well on it, poor lad.
No.
In fact, make him use a glycerin juice for a fortnight and he could very probably go into the 100 metres and beat Usain Bolt if there was a toilet at the other end of the track. It has that kind of effect, and that's nothing against Andy at all in any way, shape or form, but some people are, I think, perhaps a little bit sensitive to it. But I would suggest an awful lot fewer than are sensitive to PG. And I'm wondering how many of the folks in the chat room have a PG sensitivity, or who prefer a glycerin-based juice, or would that paragraph make any difference to them? Where it says, my sense is that in the long run, electronic cigarettes that use glycerin as an excipient may become the standard. Using glycerin would probably avoid the production of most of the volatile organic compounds detected in this study and would also alleviate any concerns about respiratory irritation. I should probably actually put the next bit in, which says that the bottom line is that the electronic cigarettes show great promise as an effective smoking cessation device that greatly reduces health risks for smokers and at the same time helps protect non-smokers by eliminating second-hand smoke. I must admit, I wish he wouldn't use this effective smoking cessation device thing all the time. But if it greatly reduces health risks for smokers and at the same time helps protect non-smokers by eliminating second-hand smoke, and we've got some of that to come to a little bit later on, then that can only be a good thing. And he goes on to say as well, of course, previous studies have demonstrated that the number of carcinogens is greatly reduced in electronic cigarettes, and the levels of the only known carcinogen in the product are at trace levels. Thus, it's quite clear that electronic cigarettes greatly reduce the carcinogenic risks associated with cigarette smoking. This study documents that electronic cigarettes also greatly reduce exposure to a wide range of volatile organic compounds, making it very likely that these devices also reduce the risk of lung disease. It's all greatly reduces, doesn't say eliminates, but it's not far away from. I'm presuming there'll be a few comments in the chat about this by now.
There's quite a lot coming through.
Goody good.
I'll just go back up to the top and work my way through what I've got. Moonlit, as far as I'm aware, but I do prefer VG. I like my vapor thick and fast. Allgate has said, I have a problem with PG, so only vape VG. Marky Mar says, I've never had straight up PG or VG, I've always got a mix. Russell has said, I prefer glycerin based liquids as they make chewy phlegm. Thank you for that image.
Yes. Nice
Very
one.
Boring has said, I use 50-50 in all my liquids, no problem I am aware of with either. Bad Seed, I don't have a problem with either, but I much prefer a mix of the two. Yansu Finn saying there's not many 100% VG juices, and Seabiscuit has said no problem with PG or VG. I use them both, but prefer VG juice as I love my thick clouds of vapour.
Yes, I think it's reasonably well known. I like a very high percentage, at least 50% VG in my juices as well, because it does give you that lovely chewiness. And I get the bit about the phlegm. Yes, it does. That's very true. But I think that's a small price to pay, quite honestly, for the thickness and the chewiness. And if you find the right level, of course, you can sort all of these things out. Interesting, though, that there is not a mention of water vapour in any of that. And I just wonder what effect that's going to have on, well, cast your mind back a month or two to when we did that mystery shopper. And it was water vapour that turned blue. Mm-hmm. Which,
magic.
Isn't it just magic water vapour that turns blue? And that's all you get. But I think this is very, very significant, actually, that we now actually know not only what's coming out of the e-cig to start with, but also what we exhale. And we're exhaling some of the nicotine that's there. So it kind of brings us back to that first posting on the All About E-cigs forum, asking about, you know, he was down to 0.1 milligram delivered from a silk cut Ultra. I don't know, I mean, I gave up with silk cuts donkeys years ago. I used to end up putting my fingers around the little holes to block them off so I could get a proper drag on them.
I wrapped wet toilet paper around them.
Well, it was only because I couldn't get a bread poultice on the back of my neck all the time to get a decent draw out of them. But yeah, I think it kind of tells us that, I mean, I've been trying that 45 milligram stuff out lately, both the IntelliCig and the Bite Extra, and there have been occasions when I have actually found myself getting a similar kind of buzz to what I used to get out of the first fag on a morning, which I have to say was the only one in the last 20 years that ever gave me anything of a dizzy buzz or anything. And with the 45 I can almost get there. And that kind of tells me that, you know, we need a much higher level of nicotine in the juice than you might think. And I'm fairly convinced that people that are down on 6 milligram and 8 milligram might as well be on 0. I cannot honestly see that you can be getting that much out of it.
Well, I can say I've had days where I have vaped 0 milligram juice for quite a long period during the day. But I also have days where I'll vape up to 24 milligram.
Yeah. Well,
so it's weird.
I've just dropped some 18 into this, which I'm not showing too closely, otherwise I'll not have a show tomorrow night. I've put some 18 in this because it's PG and this is set up for PG, and there's a reason for all of that, and I can get away with it, but I can feel there's a hell of a difference between this and the 36 to 45 that I'm generally using. Excuse me. If anybody watching is wondering why I'm pressing a little clicky counter when I take a draw from that particular device, you'll have to tune in tomorrow. Or ask John Bon 1, but he won't tell you. It was his idea. I'm blaming John for that one. So I am, and rightly so.
Yep.
I'm just wondering whether there's anything more in what Michael Siegel's written. I'm going to read the last 2 paragraphs because the last one is telling, it's cutting, it's so cutting, it's really good, and it's worth, I'm going to even see if I can make it bigger. This will be good. There we go. Here's the bit we're going to look at. Based on the findings in this study, there is every reason to believe that electronic cigarettes are much safer than tobacco cigarettes, and that if smokers can quit smoking, I'm going to put the word tobacco, via the use of these products, they are greatly improving their health. I love that. Greatly improving, greatly reducing, greatly everything. And here's the telling part. I don't expect anti-smoking groups to alter their position based on this scientific evidence, because their opposition is based on ideological and economic grounds rather than scientific ones in the first place. However, these results should help to reassure ex-smokers who have quit, in brackets, smoking tobacco, using electronic cigarettes, that they have done themselves a great favour and reduced their health risks substantially, despite the advice from many anti-smoking organisations and researchers that they should return to cigarette smoking rather than use an illegitimate tool for smoking cessation. That man is a hero. Those 2 paragraphs, if you do nothing else at my behest at any time, anybody that's watching this, get those 2 paragraphs, print them off big and send them to everybody that's ever objected to e-cig usage and suggested that they're dangerous and we should all go back to fags. That tells it to me. That is just, it's thrilling, it's bang on. The man is so sensible, and that is exactly spot on. Now, while I was looking at Michael Siegel's blog, I came across another little piece of information. Bear in mind all of this little lot, he was talking about second-hand smoke, and talking about how e-cigs, not so bad, and so on and so forth. But I know he has in the past looked at second-hand smoke, and he's kind of debunked that. Now, I also know that Russell, who is in the chat tonight, mentioned a couple of weeks ago about the BMA report, and there's been a little bit of something on that, but I'm thinking we'll come to that after we've had a break, just to give people time to digest what we've said. Any comments can come through, we'll take them, and then we'll go into this BMA thing. Does that sound okay to you?
Sounds spot on to me.
Then that is what we shall do. We will be back right after this.
Vaporworld.co.uk sponsors conversation on VT Talk.
Do you want your cash to scratch a little bit further? Do you want a safer cig? Then you need Safer Cigs, a proud sponsor of VaporTrails.tv. Go to www.safercigs.co.uk, stretchy man not included.
The GG, because you want one.
iVapor and iVapor Elixir, based in Yorkshire, for your e-cig needs. That's ivapor.co.uk and ivapor-elixir.co.uk. iVapor and ivapor-elixir.co.uk, proud sponsors of VaporTrails.tv.
And now back to conversation on VT Talk, sponsored by vaporworld.co.uk.
Yes, I cut that little VTTV bit a tad short there. My apologies for that. But I'm just a little bit excited by this as well. And I really want to share it with everybody. Because again, it's kind of, I think the tide is turning. It says, British Medical Association suspends membership of physician for questioning the validity of a second-hand smoke claim, a claim which the BMA itself admits was incorrect. Yes, you read that headline correctly. The British Medical Association has suspended the membership of a physician who, on a radio talk show, criticised the BMA for disseminating to the public what he believed was inaccurate data on the danger of second-hand smoke exposure in cars. And the BMA acknowledges that the physician was indeed correct and that the BMA's claim was a false one. According to an article in The Pulse, a retired GP has been suspended from the BMA Welsh Council until 2014 after he questioned the evidence behind the BMA's campaign to ban smoking in vehicles on BBC Radio. Dr. Brendan O'Reilly, a retired GP, has also had his BMA membership suspended until he provides an acceptable written apology to 4 named BMA members, including Dr. Vivienne Nathanson, head of BMA Science and Ethics Committee, forgive a small laugh here. In a hearing held yesterday, a BMA Council panel said they considered Dr. O'Reilly's language when describing his opposition to the BMA's use of statistics on the risks of passive smoking in cars as unacceptable. But Dr. O'Reilly said he was being harangued by the BMA for simply expressing a difference of opinion. Among figures questioned by Dr. O'Reilly was a statistic that children in cars are exposed to 23 times more toxins than people in a smoky bar. In its determination, the BMA admitted it did, at a later stage, have to publicly revise some of the data in its briefing paper, Smoking in Vehicles, but it said Dr. O'Reilly's use of the term manipulation was detrimental to the honour and interest of the BMA. I think that's late speak for he caught us out, pointed out we were telling porkies, and we don't like people that do that. The panel also said it found unacceptable a comparison made by Dr. O'Reilly between the statement of Dr. Vivienne Nathanson and the dossier that allegedly led to the Iraq War. The panel said in identifying himself as a member of BMA Wales, he should have conducted himself in accordance with the duties expected of a member. Now, the rest of the story is really nice. Here's the bit. After the error was revealed, the BMA acknowledged the mistake and issued a retraction. It says, I love this. Please note, there is an error in the BMA briefing paper, Smoking in Vehicles. On page 4, in the 3rd paragraph, the following sentence is incorrect. Further studies demonstrate that the concentration of toxins in a smoke-filled vehicle is 23 times greater than that of a smoky bar, even under realistic ventilation conditions. And then in capitals it says, this sentence has been replaced with, further studies demonstrate that the concentration of toxins in a smoke-filled vehicle could be up to 11 times greater than that of a smoky bar. We apologise for this error. Up to 11. Ha ha ha! Sussed! They've been nabbed. They've been nabbed. I honestly think that the establishment, I don't know, I'm not normally paranoid, but why do they seem to be out to get smokers and by extension e-cig users? Because we're a kind of smoker as well. We're all nicotine users. What are these people on? What makes them think they're not going to get nabbed and caught out? And, more to the point as well, that says up to 11 times greater. It could be 1 time or 2 times greater, because they're on the way up to 11. Could be anywhere. I'm sorry, my voice is going all squeaky. Help me out, Sav.
I've got a couple of comments that have come in from chat. Moonlit Liz said, 23 times, how does that even work? Followed up by, evidently it doesn't, but seriously. Very boring is said, it's those air fresheners causing the chemicals, not the smoking. And Put has said, I wonder how much toxins people driving in busy traffic are exposed to.
Well, now, there you go. That's the point, isn't it? I mean, if you've ever been stuck in the traffic like a load of people were this morning waiting to get through the Tyne Tunnel because her Madge was there opening it. They closed it last night so she could open it again today. But never mind. I know this, for I have been told. It got closed last night so her Madge could open it again this morning. They could have just left it going, but never mind. Yeah, I mean, if you'd been stuck in that queue, or if you've ever, I don't know whether it's happened to you, Sav, but it's certainly happened to me when something's gone wrong with the automatic barriers at the exit to the tunnel, and it goes right the way back. Now they've got those dirty, great big expel air jobs blowing all the stuff back out, but even so, you can sit and gas yourself.
Oh, easy.
No problem. And I dread to think what it must be like in traffic like in London, because the times I've only driven twice in London, and I'm here to tell you, never again. I cannot understand why Londoners, the really rich ones, go and buy things like Ferraris, because you never get above 7 miles an hour.
Then someone crashes into you.
Indeed. It's expense looking for somewhere to park, I think. But yeah, I mean, you know, when you take all of that on board and you kind of look at it and you think, good grief, I can't see. I mean, I was dragged up by a pair of smokers, with, again, no detriment meant to my mum, my dad or anybody else, but I was brought up by smokers. My grandma and granddad smoked. In fact, all of my grandparents smoked. All of my cousins smoked. All of my uncles and aunties smoked. I can't think of anybody in our family that didn't. So every time you were in the car, it was normal that the driver's window was wound down, the woodbine or the capstan full strength was on, the ash was flicked out of the window, so was the tab end when it was finished with. You were sat in the back. I haven't suffered by it. I mean, you know, they reckon it stunts your growth. I'm 6'2", for God's sake. So, you know, I'm not mentioning anybody else before anybody says anything, and I don't care what they put in chat. It's just as well I can't say it, because I know who's getting mentioned now. I'm not saying out. But yeah, I mean, you know, it didn't affect me, and I honestly, I don't think it would affect kids anyway. And certainly, if they try and take this and say, well, E-cigs will have the same effect, we've just seen before the break that ain't no way that's going to happen. But I just thought I'd bring that up, and again, exhort people to think with their own brains when they read this stuff that comes out from folks that you would expect to have our best interests at heart, but appear to have the profits of big pharma more at heart than the well-being, health and freedom of the citizens of this fair land of ours, and indeed worldwide, because it's as bad in the States and everywhere else. These anti-smoking zealots appear to be getting everywhere, and they keep on dragging E-cigs with them. I'm seeing your eyes flitting from left to right, so I know there's comments coming.
A lot of them I can't read. Put did say that, but Dave, you would have been 7'3" if you hadn't smoked. But
my wife wishes.
But my favourite comment that I have to read out came from Old Git, and he says, I vent more toxins out of my bottom than I do when I exhale using VG liquids. I think that sums it up nicely.
Well, I think we can both attest to the fact that he does that with amazing regularity. Quite what the toxicity of it is, I do not know, but the volume we can attest to.
Yes, the volume is applaudable.
Yes, and if I can ever find a way of recording a hangout, evidence will be made available. We probably need to leave that one there. How to win friends and influence people. Or not, depending on how you look at it.
Indeed.
Indeed. Right, so that's I think that's probably as far as we need to go on that one. But it's funny how all of this is coming together, and how the future appears to be being mapped out. Now, I should stress that none of what I'm saying is carved in stone. This is just my take on the stuff I've been reading, led in some cases by posts on forums, for which I'm always grateful, but quite often brought about by looking at a site called tobacco.org, which is a canny little site, and what it does is it gives you a list of all the stuff that's been published in newspapers and magazines and what have you all over the place, and I'm quite happy to pick stories out of here because it does keep you up to date with what's going on. And one of the ones that hit me earlier today, it's probably not on that page, it'll have scrolled off, is this one. Big Tobacco moves forward with plans to develop new, healthier cigarette. Philip Morris International, one of the leading tobacco cigarette manufacturers and makers of Marlboro, Virginia Slims and Parliament, which is interesting, announced plans to produce a new line of lower health risk cigarettes by 2017, aimed at combating the budding electronic cigarette industry. There you go, look at that. When we were talking before about the potential for tobacco companies to kind of go, oh, hang on, they're coming after we need to stop this, it looks as though they're going to. Philip Morris CEO Louis Camilleri was quoted as saying that this new type of cigarette would create a paradigm shift and called it a game changer. Matthew Steingraber, founder of Tampa Bay's White Cloud Electronic Cigarettes, said news of this move comes as a surprise to some in the e-cigarette business. Electronic cigarettes are already a lower health risk when compared with tobacco cigarettes, and we know why now because we covered that before the break. Part of this new line of cigarettes is one that would involve a cigarette that heats the tobacco instead of burning, generating an aerosol inhaled by consumers, which is strikingly similar to what e-cigarettes already do. Well, I'm not so sure about e-cigarettes, but I've got a piece coming up a little bit later on in the show which is exactly that, but that'll wait. Electronic cigarettes or e-cigs recently made the spotlight when two separate reports by financial titans UBS and Wells Fargo highlighted the industry's growth rate, speculating that the industry would quadruple in its growth by 2014, and so on and so on and so forth. Again, interesting stuff. We knew, because of what we'd been hearing in various other places, that Philip Morris was looking at something to do with the e-cig market, and it looks as though they've played their hands. I must admit, I'd expected them to buy up an e-cig, a big e-cig vendor, probably one of the lucky ones. That would have been my expectation. Just in case anybody doesn't know, Philip Morris is known also as the Altria group, the people behind Marlboro, basically. And yeah, they're saying that the common thinking among the remaining independent e-cig companies was that Philip Morris International and Reynolds American would pick up subsequent e-cig brands in the wake of Lorelard's decision, because Lorillard, as we know, has bought out Blue for $135 million, and they're not going to do that unless they think there's going to be some profit in it. So there we go. We now have Philip Morris looking to use something like, oh, look, I tell you what, I was going to keep this until after the break, but I think I'll play it in now. You know what's coming. For those of you that aren't aware, we go out on a podcast as well these days, so that usually by midnight of the night of a show, it goes out as a podcast. It's available on iTunes, it's available on Apple TV. There's a news piece on the front page of the site that shows you how you can subscribe to the podcast, and we're putting it out in 2 resolutions at the moment, large and HD. And if you subscribe to the podcast, you'll never miss a show, and you can take it with you anywhere you go. It'll come down onto your iPhone, onto your iPad, onto your laptop, everywhere you go. You can just take it with you. And it's come for a number of reasons, one of which was we had a request from 1 or 2 people saying, is there any way we can download the show so that we can watch it when we can't get online? And it's also handy if you want to watch it in high definition and you don't have the bandwidth to stream it down. Anyway, because of all of this podcasty lark, I've taken to watching a fair few, one of which is CNET's Always On, which is hosted by a lady, a girl, a lass called Molly Wood, from Mollywood. Mollywood? Yeah, anyway. And it just interested me a lot watching this, because one of the first things that was put up on their podcast channel was the piece I'm about to show you, which I thought was very interesting because it shows e-cig users, I think, the way other people see us, and also shows why I think Philip Morris might be onto a loser. Have a look at this and see what you think.
The future of smoking is here. How's that for a segue? We're taking a look at a high-tech smoking innovation that makes the whole thing healthier and maybe even cooler. Do I inhale at the same time? Is it like a cigarette?
Like a cigarette.
Just in case you haven't heard of vaping, let me tell you all about it. This is what you guys do all day. Vape it up. These are smokeless cigarettes.
I hesitate the word sucking.
The tech industry's attempt to re-engineer smoking.
Yeah, most people call it vaping as a kind of term for vaporizing.
Maybe as we talk, we can come up with something
Better than that.
more.
You don't like vaping.
I don't love it.
I visited Silicon Valley-based Thermo Essence Technologies, where they are designing and manufacturing their own high-tech vaporizer.
It's kind of warm.
No, it's not supposed to hurt you.
It does not involve combustion, which is taking a flame to tobacco and burning it.
Underneath the top.
Instead, what happens here is the tobacco is heated
That's where you would put it.
and turned into vapor.
You can inhale and exhale that vapor, but you don't get combustion. So A, you're not destroying the material that you're trying to inhale anyway, and B, you don't have the negative side effects and consequences of smoking.
We're not regulated by the FDA, but we in a way self-regulate. It helps us sleep at night knowing we're not giving people something that can off-gas or can melt.
Would people look at this and say it's an electronic cigarette?
Some of our products are certainly what we would consider a performance electronic cigarette. And we actually build our atomizers, the little magic part of the device that generates the vapor is our technology that we build right here, 10 feet over that way.
We have a clean metal tube that is electroless nickel plated. There's no solder, no plastic, no unknown materials in there.
It's this precision technology that has made Thermo Essence vaporizers popular here and around the world.
I'm trying to figure out if I can hold it in a cooler way.
You look pretty cool.
You're just saying that. Feel kind of Sherlock Holmesy.
Looks fun, right?
That's a
But that
zero
was without nicotine.
solution. You want to try some nicotine? Of course you
I don't know. I do actually, because I want to know how it tastes.
How about
You're
a
gonna-
dose that a lifetime smoker would consume?
Seriously?
So this
Are you swear to God that's not killing me? Because
No.
that is awful.
After a few more puffs, I realized this maybe was not my thing.
I'm sweating. Like that is...
But you have to be.
But the folks at Thermo Essence Technologies clearly see a future where tobacco and other substances like medical marijuana could be delivered in a safer way than smoking. And then there's way, way into the future when who knows what we might inhale.
People are looking at flavored liquids as a way to kind of satiate your desire to eat a sweet, and so as a potential weight loss or as a potential curb your cravings method, you get that flavor and that feeling.
So I could just have like a little espresso and then a little chocolate.
The guy at Harvard made inhalable lobster.
I don't want to inhale that. But maybe in the Matrix-like future where we just can't, or if we can't farm them anymore. Vapor doodle doo. I don't know, now I'm just goofing off. I gotta say, I am still on the hunt for a better verb for vaping, so if you have any ideas, please email me. Also, I haven't tried smoking one of those things inside yet. I hear it's a little hit or miss. If you try it, take pictures.
Now you've got to say, that was a good piece. That was a very good piece. And you heard what Molly said at the end of it. Go subscribe to Always On and take pictures and do email her with whether you like vaping as a word, as a verb or not. And actually, as a programme, I do like Molly's programme. She looks at stuff really well. What did you make of that, Sav?
I found it confusing but interesting, and I'm going to actually read out Moonlit's comments because he's pretty much said the same as what I was thinking. He said, I'm confused. Are these e-cigs as we know them or the iolite style devices? It's just not very clear what an e-cig actually is, and I'd prefer if we could keep marijuana out of the picture.
Yeah, well, unfortunately in California that ain't going to happen. That particular e-cig, 1 or 2 people in the chat room and watching on video on demand or the podcast will recognise as being the Apex Alpha. That's exactly what it is, and those are the people that made it, and they are the same people that make the ATA, the AVA atomizer, the $50 atomizer, the half-ton atomizer that we looked at quite a while ago and couldn't really make work all that well. Now we know why. It's meant to be used with medical marijuana. However, the interesting part about it is, and as it happens, I think I've got their website up here. Let's have a quick gander at it, if it's coming through. If we go to, here we have Thermo Vape T1 and Evolution Botanical Vaporizers, and these are without doubt meant to be used with HYB, as it were. But if we go back to the shop as such and go to e-liquid vaporizers, then here we have the AVA range, or the Apex, and the prices on these are much more compelling than was the case when they were being sold as other devices, shall we say. I think at $99.97 for the Ultra and $89 for the Ultra Light, if that's kind of your bag, they actually look as though they might work a bit better as well. And that's with the, you can get them with the res kit for $200. There's a conversion kit, so that those of you that want to try flaked tobacco or ground up tobacco could go in that route as well. I mean, it's all there. They are there. And yeah, I've said for a donkey's age that the reason, or one of the main reasons, I don't like the verb vaping or to vape is because I associate it mostly with marijuana use. Things like the iolite, which were invented for use with marijuana, and as we've now discovered, that was, I think, the be all and end all of the Apex Alpha Ultra, was to use it with marijuana, which is legal medical marijuana in California and 1 or 2 other states in the States, I believe. But I've always known vaping as being to do with marijuana. I've never actually been that comfortable with the term when applied to e-cigs. As most people know, I'll refer to an e-cig user rather than a vapor. I'm less than comfortable with it. But yeah, it does occur to me that any of the viewers of Molly's podcast looking at those would think, oh, you know, if you were normally a smoker and you hadn't heard of e-cigs, you might look at that and think, that's a techno geekery. I could, what were they called again? Quick Google it, and you know, for what is it, $90 or $100, you could get a full kit by the looks of it. And it's kind of that level of geekery. It could catch on. So it's a two-edged sword. Yes, there is that that association with medical marijuana and other herbs. God only knows what else you could put in it. I dread to think. Well, actually, I don't. No, that's for a hangout, not for the show, David. But yeah, I mean, I'm almost tempted to get one of the herbal ones and grind up some American Spirit and give it a go, just to see what kind of difference it makes. I don't know. Tell you what we'll do. We'll take some adverts, and when we come back, we'll take any comments and questions from the chat on that. Does that suit?
Suits me fine.
Super duper. Here we go. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Vaporworld.co.uk sponsors conversation on VT Talk. And now back to conversation on VT Talk, sponsored by vaporworld.co.uk.
There you go. Yes. So, comments I've heard, we have comments about the verb vaping. To vape or not to vape? That is the question.
We do. We've had a few suggestions coming through.
Okie dokie.
We've had steaming, fogging.
No, you just know what's going to come out of that. Cries from behind the bar. You can't fogging do that in here. No.
Nick healing. Bubbling. Oldgate has said, how about smoking? And Bad Seed said unsmoking.
Okay. Any more than that?
We've got no smoking, digital smoking, puffing, and Salmon Roach calls it Derek.
Well done, Sam. Oh, Lord. That's a sense of humour I wish I had, honestly. What are you doing now, Derek? Can I have a swift Derek on your ego? More tea, Vicar. Actually, it was funny, I was laid in bed the other night and there was something came into my head and it had nothing to do with nicotine, but it was to do with inhalation. But it was false. I've forgotten what it was now, but it really sounded good in my head at 3 o'clock in the morning. I should have written it down, but I didn't.
Always the way.
Indeed. Now, you did say as well that was it Dolphin had been in touch?
Yes, Dolphin sent me a message to point you in the direction of the blog spot for the latest entry.
That would be this one then.
That would be.
That one there that says the New York Times reports that the FDA spied on agency scientists who disagreed with established positions and tried to quell collaboration between dissenters. Now, you can see it well enough on screen there, but let's just run through it a little bit and see where we go on it. It says, according to a July the 14th article in the New York Times, the Food and Drug Administration spied on a number of agency scientists who expressed disagreement with established agency positions by secretly capturing their emails, analysing them, tracking their computer keystrokes in real time, and creating directories of communications organised by the names of sympathetic public officials with whom they were communicating. A wide-ranging surveillance operation by the FDA against a group of its own scientists used an enemies list of sorts, as it secretly captured thousands of emails that the disgruntled scientists sent privately to members of Congress, lawyers, Labour officials, journalists and even President Obama. Previously undisclosed records show what began as a narrow investigation into the possible leaking of confidential agency information by 5 scientists quickly grew in mid-2010 into a much broader campaign to counter outside critics of the agency's medical review process, according to the cache of more than 80,000 pages of computer documents generated by the surveillance effort. This is, what is it? The surveillance operation identified 21 agency employees, congressional officials and outside medical researchers and journalists thought to be working together to put out negative and defamatory information about the agency. Good grief! Yes, I would suggest that you go and read that. It's tobaccoanalysis.blogspot.co.uk. Professor Michael Siegel is now hosting it on blogspot.co.uk. So it's tobaccoanalysis.blogspot.co.uk is where you'll find it, and bookmark it, because I have got so much time for Michael Siegel. The guy has been a tobacco researcher or a tobacco harm reduction researcher or whatever for a donkey's age, and he's one of the few honest ones, and I wouldn't mind betting he's on the FDA's list. I would be almost certain of that, that he will be on the FDA's list. And Sav, just for the second, I'm not going to be able to hear a word you say because my earplugs just dropped to bits that I monitor you on. Do apologise. When good technology goes bad, it's one of those nights. Thank goodness we didn't have a giggle fest before we came on air, eh?
Don't start.
As if I would. I tell you what it is, I mean, I remain convinced, and I'm not normally a great one for conspiracy theories, but I remain firmly convinced that most of the anti-tobacco stuff that we hear now, and anti-e-cig stuff by extension, because they seem to be as much against electronic cigarettes as they are against tobacco, is purely and simply killjoys. People who feel they have no need to enjoy life and want to make sure that every bugger else is miserable as well. And it's really about time this kind of thing was exposed. And that we've just seen from Michael Siegel and from the New York Times is telling us that actually the FDA, and I would imagine most other medical and healthcare regulatory agencies throughout the world, are probably on the same wavelength. They're trying to keep the proper, good, truthful information down. Hence the BMA jumping on their member. Hence the FDA doing all this under the carpet, round the corner, sneaking the spy cams in and keylogging to find out what information is being disseminated. They're trying to bury the truth. That's my feeling.
That's very much what it seems like.
It certainly does look that way, doesn't it? I mean, it's almost impossible to put another spin on it. It really is. I don't think the threat to e-cigs comes from big tobacco, because by the time we get to 2017 with Marlboro and what have you, they're going to be too late. I mean, at the rate of growth that we've seen in e-cigs just over this last year, we're up to, what is it, 600,000 they're saying in the UK now?
Yeah,
and
something like that.
2.5 million or more in the US. And I've seen it somewhere, and for the life of me I can't remember where, but something like 8 million people worldwide. And that's including territories where nicotine juice is banned. You know, so I mean, it's an unstoppable force now. It really is. And I do think that pieces like that from Molly Wood going out in general interest or geek interest programmes, I think that's really going to help matters rather than hinder.
I agree.
Takes it to a wider audience. As I said, I really would entreat you to subscribe to Molly's podcast and write in. Ask her to cover more on e-cigs, because I'm pretty sure she will. I'm certain she will. If she thinks there's an interest there, she'll cover it, and she'll cover it in a way that only Molly can. And if you watch a few of our podcasts, you'll get to understand what I mean. She's loopy but brilliant. Love her to bits. But while we're talking about big tobacco and what have you, did we cover this one? Did we cover the fact that Swixher are launching an electronic cigarette? Now, people might not know who Swixher are, but let me tell you, Swixher are the people behind King Edward VII cigars, and also behind Swixher Sweets cigars. And it says here, Swixher Sweets is throwing its hat into the electronic tobacco ring with new product line, E-Swixher electronic cigarettes and cigars. I will get this big enough so everybody can see it. There you go. The E-Swixher products will roll out in August with a limited introduction. New e-cigarettes will be available in 2 flavours, natural smooth and cool menthol, while the e-cigar delivers a unique Swixher Sweets taste, according to the company's announcement. The e-cigarette will be available as disposables or a rechargeable express kit in 12mg and 18mg nicotine levels. Bit low that. Each one will be equivalent, get this, each one will be equivalent to about 2 packs of cigarettes, according to Swixher. Swisher Sweets is not the only tobacco products company to join the e-cigarette industry recently. Lorillard Inc., through its Lorillard Tobacco Company subsidiary, announced in April it was acquiring Blue e-cigs for 135 million in cash, as has previously been reported. Now, I don't know who Swisher's been talking to about the product. That patently they're not going to be making them themselves. And looking at the pictures that we saw there, they're not that big. So they may need to change, I think, their equivalencies, because as we know, cig equivalencies is a waste of time.
Yeah.
But another tobacco company entering the e-cig market. It's going to be coming more and more, and I think it's probably a good thing. Have we any comment on it at all?
Well, the first comments that are coming in is people thought Swixher made air freshener, toilet freshener, which then led on to, so after a curry you can freshen the toilet by talking on a Swixher.
It's one way of looking at it. I usually do. I don't know that I freshen it any, but I certainly sit and talk while I'm... Too much information. Shut up, David.
Yes. And an incredibly bizarre question that has just come through. It says, from Very Boring, it says, just for fun, can Dave do a Gorbachev impression for the viewers before he goes?
I used to like you. Very boring. Yes. No, I'm not going there. I must admit, when I look at that, if I go into... No, that one. When I go into that close-up shot, yes, I can see what you mean. It's just not quite the right shape. Hopefully it'll have gone by next week, because it doesn't look as though it's going to go away tonight. Yes, thank you for that, Very Boring. Gorbachev. He's not funny.
The cat out.
Go on, I dare you.
I think earlier on the comments I got from Kat were, yes, when you said you came up with an idea during the night, she said, yes, we can see what came into his head. It left a mark, which was then she followed up with, tell him that was no thought, it was a boil.
Right.
So, yeah.
Love you too, Chris. I like having friends, you know.
And Mark Crew was just typed in, I wondered why Dave was sat so far away.
It's why I've kept it on this shot most of the night, because if it had been on that one, I'd have been sitting like, you know, that. Ow. Ah. I mean, it's that bad it put Mark Jones off putting mayonnaise on his sandwiches the other night. Davy me. But just, I've been given some advice by a member of the team who reckons that high levels of nicotine can sometimes have this effect. So I've dropped down to 18 milligram. And we're going to see if that makes any difference by tomorrow night.
Oh, you never know.
You never do. And if anybody is wondering why you keep hearing a click every time I pick that one up and give it a drag, you'll have to tune into the Haze Hour tomorrow night, because that's when it will all be made available for you to find out. That is exactly when it will all be made available for you to find out. But it's time to roll the credits one more time.
It certainly is.
It certainly is. I'm going to say thank you to Sav for joining me this evening, and thank you to everybody for tuning in live if you have been. If you're watching it on podcast, please subscribe. If you're watching it on video on demand, thank you for joining us, and continue so to do. Tell all your friends, the more the merrier, as they say. And I will see you tomorrow night for the Haze Hour, but until next week, from the three of us on the programme, night night. What? Has it all gone wrong again?
VT Talk was sponsored by Vaporworld, introducing the straight-up range of e-liquid from the USA containing real tobacco extracts.